Good evening and welcome to the LaRouche Organization Symposium. I'm Diane Sayre, president of the LaRouche Organization, and today is Friday, July 25th. And we are holding this symposium today on the eve of a very important conference occurring at the UN, convened by Saudi Arabia and France to launch a two-state solution, Israel-Palestine. But as people know, LaRouche and now his widow, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, have insisted that you really cannot have peace in a vacuum. Peace is not the absence of war, but you must have a development plan. LaRouche wrote such a program called the Oasis Plan in 1975. And this evening, we're going to be speaking with a nuclear engineer who has a PhD in materials, who has actually put some flesh on the bones of this proposal, which I'm very excited to introduce. Now, before I get to our guest, let me just say a couple things in way of update. The LaRouche Organization is going to be releasing a white paper on the revelations of Tulsi Gabbard on the role of John Brennan, Barack Obama, Victoria Nuland, the whole cast and crew of the leaders of American intelligence agencies, and knowingly promulgating a lie that Russia was involved in meddling in the US elections. And the purpose of this lie, and it has nothing to do if you support President Trump or not, the purpose of promoting such a lie was to put the United States on a war footing with Russia. This is extremely dangerous. People have to be brought to justice. We are going to discover a British hand behind all of this, Sir Richard Dearlove of MI6, GCHQ, etc. And if this is allowed to stand, then really the world is not safe, because if the leading superpower on the planet, the United States, can be lured into a war based on false intelligence, and we saw that with Iraq and the non-existent weapons of mass destruction, then we are really in trouble. So I just wanted to announce that we'll have such a thing early next week to go out on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. We're not letting go of this. This has to be ended. These are the exact same networks that put Lyndon LaRouche in jail to silence proposals exactly like the Oasis Plan that we are presenting now. And a further update on that, the French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that in September at the UN General Assembly, France will be finally officially recognizing the state of Palestine. I think that's long overdue, and frankly, I'm not terribly impressed. We have to do something to stop the starvation and the mass killing, the genocide right now. And I understand he is not coming in person to this conference next week, which he should be. So with that, let me bring in my guest, Vincenzo Romanello. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. So I think just to get started, I'm going to show a couple images of the Oasis Plan, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to tell everyone what you have done, because I think it's tremendous and it will help us to actually make this real. So just for the audience, here is just an image of what LaRouche proposed in 1975. By the way, this blue canal is not the Ben Gurion Canal for shipping to take things away from Suez. He was talking about water management, hydroelectric power, massive desalination. And it turns out that the Dead Sea is about 400 meters below sea level. So if you brought water in and dropped it that amount, you could have also a source of hydroelectric power. This was based on the two-state. So this was the last UN Security Council resolution of the 1967 borders. As people know, the West Bank has been eaten away by illegal Israeli settlements. How that is to be resolved will be a challenging issue. I know that the former Israeli leader, Ehud Olmert, and I forget which previous Palestinian leader have talked about perhaps shifting some of the border lines to allow an equivalent land area for the Palestinians. We'll see. That's why economic development is first and foremost. You're not going to get a political solution unless there is a viable plan whereby people can actually live with adequate energy, water, etc. And that is what our friend Dr. Romanello is going to tell us about. So please go ahead.
So I read a paper about the Oasis Plan and the proposal of Mr. Lyndon LaRouche some years ago, and it was very interesting. But being an engineer, I was immediately curious to know if we can have a higher level of this plan, not just philosophical, not just an idea, but I asked myself, okay, what happens if I do my job? And if I try to figure out how many nuclear plants we have to manufacture, and how many pipes and desalination plants, what would be the cost? What would be the timing for that? What would be the workforce required for that? Because until we put numbers, every good idea is just philosophy and can be criticized very easily. So I decided to put everything together and to put everything in a paper that everybody can read and criticize, of course. And my attempt was just to start this huge and complex work. And because what I understood, what I agree with Mr. Arush for sure, is that the Oasis Plan is a visionary initiative aimed mainly at fostering economic development and stability and peace in that area, which is strongly needed, as we all know. But for that, peace is something that must be done somehow. It's not simply wishful thinking. You need conditions for peace, and conditions for peace, in my understanding, are first of all having enough water, enough energy, enough proper healthcare system, enough food, and of course, mainly the first source of this is water, because water is used mainly 80% by agricultural needs, but also for industry and obviously for various other needs. So
Can I just
yeah,
show this map? And maybe you want to say something about what you're depicting here so people get an idea.
yes. My first question before starting any serious analysis or semi-serious analysis, let me say, is where we need this kind of plants and how many plants and how much water we need, of course. And so I took all these maps and all this geodata with distribution of the population in the North Africa and Middle East area, so to understand where are the needs and where are the water sources. So as you see, in blue lines are coastal lines where you can take water and desalinate water. There are also some other water resources relatively limited. And so I put in red dots the big nuclear plants of Korean type, but this is just an example, but also the green dots, the small modular reactors. I I designed small modular reactors mainly because you need a lot of energy to desalinate water, proper amount of water. Not only, but this is not enough, of course. Then you have to pump this water in the internal areas where there are communities where you want to make this agriculture. So I split the task in two. So ordinary nuclear power plants available and small and advanced small modular reactors, about which I will speak later if you want. So you have you see here, for example, close to Gaza, you have a big plant for desalination and also a small modular reactor, some small modular reactors for pumping and for providing energy to the communities. These are just an example, but of course, detailed siting should be studied properly with the authorities of the area. This is just an idea, proposal, which gives you an idea how this should be done. And if we looking at the map, but also taking a look to the numbers, we know today that, okay, first, I already told that the main needs are human consumption, of course, industrial requirements, and agricultural irrigation. That's obvious. But what happens is that, according to estimates, there is at least a deficit of 100 billion tons of cubic meters of water per year in that area. So my idea was, okay, if we identify how much water is needed and what is the deficit, how we cover this deficit, and how many plants will we need for that. This is the idea. I put some on this map, but going more into detail, the question was how to produce 100 billion cubic meters per year in the area. And I found finally, with the simple calculation that it is indicated in the paper, that it would be required power of roughly 200 terawatt hour per year, and roughly 60 for water pumping, which means 20, roughly, just to make it short, 25 nuclear plants to be put around, of course, in this map. And
now, can I ask you
yes.
about this? Because that just seems like so much more water. That seems like so much more water than they have there already. And I think, well, and they already are below normal. You had some figures and I forget what they were, but there's a certain normal amount of water that's calculated per capita use, and this region. Do you want to say something about?
Well, I report in the report, for example, that in some water-stressed nations like Jordan or Yemen, current per capita availability is 500 cubic meters per person per year, which is under the absolute scarcity threshold, for example. And so by 2050, population growth alone would push these deficits unless new water sources are secured.
So what is the normal standard? You said 500 cubic meters per water per year is way below. What would it be in some place like the United States or Italy or?
I don't remember by heart the numbers, but I assume something like 1 order of magnitude, 10, something around.
Wow.
10 times.
Wow. So not even close, not even in the same universe.
No, definitely not. In Europe, we consume less than in US. I believe the US is the most the place where there is the highest consumption per capita, and I believe we are in the order 1 order of magnitude more or less, something like this.
I think
yeah, the shortfall, as I told you, it's of the order of 100, 200 billion cubic meters per year in these countries, and it's going obviously also to increase. The 80% of the water, however, goes into agriculture, of course. Then only some part to industry, especially if you want to, once again, to increase the standards of these people, you need industry. But first, you need the water for cleaning yourself, for drinking, for water consumption, house consumption, of course, which cannot be in competition with agriculture, of course. You need enough water, really, for all these people and for the growth, also for the industrial growth. Because my main idea is there will be no peace until there is social justice. And social justice doesn't mean that necessarily that resources are distributed horizontally, but everybody must be able to live properly his life with the proper amount of water or energy, with the proper healthcare system. And for this, the first thing is to have water and energy. This is my assumption, of course. And so the basic idea moving in the whole paper is how we can guarantee the proper amount of water and energy to all these people. Because this is the first point if you want to have peace. There was also some criticism to my paper saying, okay, Mr. Romanello, you want to plan nuclear power plants in an area which is at war, which is unstable. Let's first obtain peace, and then let's try to make such a plan. But that's actually the opposite. You cannot have peace until you have proper standard of living of this place. And nuclear power, it is exactly for this reason. Moreover, what I answer to this criticism is there are already some countries which have some nuclear, at least some research nuclear plants. I visited the nuclear plant in Jordan. They have a nuclear plant that was done very modern, by the way, done very recently by the Koreans. Egypt is manufacturing 4 Russian nuclear power plants and also the Scandinavian plants. Israel has a nuclear plant, of course. And so, because of course, for this, you need also regulatory authority, but these countries have, and they can start this process in principle, and then also bring to other countries, to other places of the area, of course.
I think that's what Eisenhower was proposing with Atoms for Peace. In fact, I think he even had proposed that the United States would build nuclear power plants in Iran, which I guess Russia now has done, the Bushehr nuclear plant. But I think you're completely correct. Just to be a devil's advocate, why do you think there's such a desire to prevent nations from having nuclear power?
Well, there is the wrong idea, in my opinion, that if you give nuclear power to countries, then they will be able to manufacture a nuclear weapon, which is very far from reality. Sweden, for example, has nuclear plants but do not have a nuclear bomb. And not necessarily if I have a nuclear plant, traditional nuclear plant, I can manufacture a bomb. And I will be very, very technical, but I will try to be clear in this because I would like that everybody really understands this point because it's very important. To manufacture a nuclear bomb, you need very special materials or other highly enriched uranium or military grade plutonium. Not any plutonium is okay. There are different types of plutonium. What comes out from reactors, from civilian reactors, is reactor grade plutonium. For making the plutonium for the bombs, you need special dedicated reactors. You have one in Hanford in US, for example, which is a sort of wall with some holes, which is designed exactly to manufacture plutonium for bombs. It's not easy at all. It is possible in CANDU reactors because you do not stop the reactor, but in PWRs, like those in US or the Russian VVR types, you have to stop the reactor. It's not designed for this scope. And moreover, you need the reprocessing technology. It is very active material. You need special technology for manufacturing bombs. The reality is that when I was discussing with my colleagues during my career, when we were studying nuclear fuel cycles, this is something I was doing for many years of my career. Mr. Salvatore who was a very well-known scientist here in Europe and also in US, by the way, told always the problem of proliferation is not a real problem because if a country wants to proliferate, it can simply manufacture ultracentrifuges and reach uranium and make a bomb, or even very easily in principle, which is actually what Pakistan did. I had also the opportunity to visit an enrichment plant in Gronau in my career. And in that occasion, I was told how Pakistan did. They had some very old designs of the ultracentrifuges, which they declassified because they were not of interest anymore. Then a Pakistani scientist, very well-known Pakistani scientist working there, took these designs in Pakistan, manufactured the ultracentrifuges, and they made their bomb. So the reality, if a country wants to make a bomb, they can do it in any case, even without nuclear power plants. And remember, for example, France first made the bomb in 1960. They made the civilian nuclear program only 15 to 20 years later. Or North Korea, you can see. If the country wants a nuclear bomb, they don't need civilian facilities. What I suggest in my paper, for example, instead, is to have a regional facility for enrichment. Enrichment of a plant is up to 5%, not more than 5%. Enrichment for a bomb is 93%. So it's completely different. You cannot make a bomb with this stuff. No way. And on the other hand, if you want a bomb, you will have a bomb. So I think that this problem of proliferation is very deep-rooted in the US, after Carter mainly, I assume. But it's not very realistic. The reality, in my understanding, now I have to dismiss the role of an engineer and become a citizen and say what I think. The reality is that countries say, we have nuclear bomb, you don't have. We rule, we must have the gun, you should not. This is very unfair. I'm not saying that everybody should have a bomb, but it's a fact that who has a bomb will not be invaded. And the reality is that we should destroy the available bombs. But this is not what's going on.
Right.
And the other thing that I really think that I convinced is that unfortunately there is this view, especially of the elites, who see the people like a virus, and this transhuman view of the world makes them avoid. They want to avoid to have enough energy and water, and to allow people to thrive and to reproduce. Of course, they want to stop the development of the country. This is actually what they don't want: enough energy, abundant energy with low price. This is
Right.
what I really think.
No, I think that's absolutely right. We know they want depopulation. And of course, I think the whole so-called environmentalist movement depends on a very arrogant axiom, which is that somehow there is a limit to what we can discover. Because one would hope that we have nuclear fission now, that mankind would move on to develop fusion, that we might move on to discover how to get matter antimatter reactions, that we would make discoveries about I mean, China has now produced a type of rice that can grow in salt water, that as you make progress, a scientific mind would say, oh, this creates an interesting new problem. Let's make another discovery. And mankind moves forward. But somehow they have this idea as if there's nothing new to be discovered. We're stuck in a certain, geometry where there's a limited amount of resources. And since we already know everything about the universe, I guess we're going to just die a slow, gradual death of entropy or something.
Well, of course, you mentioned a lot of interesting ideas which can become a reality, and that's for sure. But even not going so far, even taking a serious scientific look at what is available already today, not to be discovered, already today, now, it's nuclear fission. The reality is that what we do today, the pressurized water reactors or even boiling water reactors use this 5% enriched uranium. Now you have to know that what we do today is we take 10 kilograms of uranium and we enrich. 9 kilograms become waste, depleted uranium, very roughly 8 to 10 kilograms, and we get only 1 kilogram of uranium. Okay? With the fast reactor technologies, we can breed and transform these 9 kilograms of uranium in plutonium and burn it and produce energy. Today, we don't do it. We simply use it as waste. So we use only 1/10 of the uranium. Not only of this 1/10, only 5% is burnt. The rest remain as waste, as uranium which can be recovered and which goes to the mine in the geological repository. So we use only 0.5% of the uranium. And we have the technology to use the whole amount of uranium, which means we can multiply our resources by a factor 200. 200, gentlemen. So this is the first thing. Second thing, we can extract uranium from seawater. There are in the whole uranium in the mines, including phosphates, we have less than, according to best estimates, less than 40 million tons uranium. Okay, in the seawater we have 5 billion tons uranium.
Wow.
Not only,
How
it's
hard
not
is
enough.
it? How hard is it to extract from
It's
seawater?
hard. It's hard today. It's not considered convenient, but although it's not that expensive, I believe that I will give you some numbers according what I remember by heart. But if today we have uranium which costs $200 per kilogram, extracting from seawater may cost 500, something like this.
I see.
So it's not huge. Today, it's not considered convenient, but only because we exploit this 0.5%. If we exploit the whole amount of uranium, extraction from seawater will be immediately convenient.
Right.
And not only, we have 1% of plutonium in the waste that we want to put in the geological repository. If we would extract this 1% plutonium, as the French do since 50 years, it's an available technology. since already 50 years. It's nothing new, nothing that we don't know how to do. You can use this 1% plutonium to breed thorium. And the amount of thorium on the Earth crust is 3 times more than uranium. So you see, in reality, I have to say, as a technician, we have enough energy already with available technology today for thousands of years for everybody. We have enough energy for the Oasis Plan and for energy for everybody. It depends only if we want to do it or not.
Right. I
And
think
this
that's
obviously, and this obviously brings me to a philosophical. I will step to sort of conclusion. What I say in my paper is that the choices before us is clear. We can continue to pour endless resources into managing crisis, or we can invest in the future where crises no longer arise. A world where innovation triumphs over scarcity, where cooperation replaces conflict, and where humanity proves once again that our greatest strength is not what we take from Earth, from mines, but what we build together.
I completely agree. And let's go back now to the Oasis Plan, because there's so many details of this, including what to do with the salt, et cetera, that I would like you to continue with what's in your paper. And if you want me to show anything, I think I have the desalination potential. Is that helpful? Oops, let's see here. Here it is.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, here, for example, I had just this is the possible deployment of a special type of small modular. We are speaking a lot about small modular reactors nowadays. I chose this design, but obviously any design is possible. I choose this because this is a high temperature reactor, which practically cannot experience a meltdown. Meltdown in this kind of reactor is impossible, because still people think to 3 Mile Island or to Chernobyl, which is even worse. But the reality is that there are these kind of designs which are small and which dissipate the heat through heat conduction and irradiation. So meltdown is physically an impossible fact, and so the dispersal of fission products. And they are very convenient, by the way. What people probably do not know is that this reactor that is being developed in the US was tested around 50 years ago in Europe, especially in particular in Germany. There were these kind of reactors that were tested successfully, but then the referendum came, political reasons, green movements, which stopped that. Otherwise, this technology would be completely mature today. You see, well, how they act? And of course, now there is new interest. The Chinese built such a reactor on the Yellow Sea. It's operating and put energy on the net. It's not it's not fantasy. It's not fiction science. It's really happening now in the countries which invest in real infrastructures, like China, for example, and which we refused to do in Europe many years ago. And this was criminal from my point of view. However, I put this in the numbers. You see, numbers of MMRs which would be required for the potential desalination and for pumping purposes. This is just an example of 10 MMRs with the estimated cost. The whole estimated cost of the plan, I have to say, it's certainly huge. It's over the order I wrote here in my paper. It's hundreds of billions.
I think it was about 300 billion, which is less than has been sent to Ukraine for this war by all of our nations.
Yes,
like
exactly. It is, and if we think that we repay this as at a rate of 20 billion per year, for example, this is 15% of what that area invests for military expenses. So I don't ask to cancel the military expenses, which would be irrational, of course. But I know that it's impossible. But if they would simply reduce by 15% their military expenditure, this plan would become reality. We're saying that. And I would like that everybody knows and understands what I'm saying, because it's very important. Do you have to decide if you want to go through light or darkness in front of us? It's a simple choice. If we see a cooperative approach and future, or if we see a future with wars and stealing the stuff from each other, we can multiply resources if we make net system of smart and good-willing people. This is my message.
Good. Now, you seem to indicate there is a use for the salt as well after the desalination process, which had not even occurred to me. I think, does this deal with some of that? Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
very shortly. I calculated the number of plants, how very roughly the size of the pipes to bring this water, the amount of small reactors for the pumping for pumping water as pumping stations. But the question that rose to me immediately, okay, it's not my job. This work should be refined, of course. But as an engineer, I asked myself, who will pay all this huge amount of money, of course, because this will be the first question that somebody would make. And not only, I know that if you separate salt from water, it may become waste if you don't treat it properly. Of course, you cannot throw it in the sea itself, of course, because it's a huge amount. So what we can do, we can extract sodium or chlorine from sodium. We can use it for, but there are today exist some sodium chloride batteries, for example. We can this area could having a huge amount of salt. They could exploit these technologies and make and earn some money from that. Another possibility, as you see here, is neutron doped silicon. I don't know how many people know that nuclear plants can be used to manufacture solar panels or microchips, also the very advanced silicon materials. But this is very special. We were doing it also in Czech Republic where I work, and many reactors do this. Because you have to see that one of the complex things to do with the semiconductors is to dope these materials. And can be done automatically with nuclear reactors.
What do you mean dope? What do you mean dope these materials?
Well, the point is that silicon itself is a semiconductor. You have to add some traces of material to make it a semiconductor to be exploited in a microchip, for example. Typically, for example, one element that is added in very small amounts in traces is phosphorus, which is added to silicon. So you have two ways, maybe one way today, which is diffusing phosphorus into silicon, which is a complex technology that it is done today. But there is also another possibility. You can put your silicon into a nuclear reactor, which was done in the past, by the way. It can be done if done properly, and some neutrons will hit the silicon atom, and which will be transmuted into phosphorus. So it will become a natural semiconductor this way. This was done in the past and can be done at a proper level. It can become the industry of the world manufacturing this kind of materials with the proper number of reactors designed on purpose, which is also something that it's a technology which is ready today. It's not something to invent. It was even done in various reactors. Wow. And then I also reported here solar power panel manufacturing and probably many other things. When you have salt, when you have nuclear reactors, when you have neutrons, and you have special scientists and the will to cooperate, you can do a lot of things. According to my estimate, they would pay 20 billion per year for this plant, but they would earn 50 or 60. You see? So not only they can have enough energy and water, but they also can earn money, which is exactly what I plan to do.
Wow.
It's wishful thinking. This idea should be refined. I'm fully aware of that. But it's not utopistic. It's possible.
Right. Well, that proves my point. They say, well, there's so much money in war because we're sending all this money to these weapons manufacturers and they're making money and their stock value goes up. But then what do you do with them? You destroy them, you destroy cities, you destroy people. Whereas if you put the same amount of money into building modern infrastructure, nuclear power, water management, high-speed rail, not only would you be generating income, but you would also be raising the standard of living, and you would create the conditions for longer term generation of a high standard of living and income and profit. I think it is actually profitable to invest in doing things that encourage growth.
Of course, this is exactly what I think and what I wrote in the paper. This is feasible. We have the technology. We know how to do it. We can do it. But there is only one precondition from my point of view. This requires that the elite should not see people like viruses of this world. Everything starts from this side. We should be peaceful. We should spend less in weapons, in destroying, and more in this kind of stuff. The point is that there is no political will for doing this. But my plan was to say, okay, look, there is a paper, questionable, but there are some numbers. Now you see that it's possible. Now I would like to know who is against this kind of plan, who is favorable to selling and manufacturing weapons and not peace. They should be responsible for that, should be accountable for that, from my point of view.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's absolutely right. And I think most of mankind agrees with you. It's only a tiny, very sick minority of people who want to do harm to others. But unfortunately, they seem to have a lot of money and control the news media in many of the Western countries. But it's not the view. I'm going to go to one of your statements from the end, because I thought this really was quite something, what you said here. If you want to say it, or I will, where you say the total cost of the Oasis Plan, $300 billion, is just a fraction of global military expenditures, which exceed $2.4 trillion in 2023. It's also equivalent to less than a few years of the combined military spending by key Middle Eastern nations. This stark comparison highlights a fundamental choice: continuing to allocate vast resources to war and conflict management, or redirecting them toward a sustainable future that fosters prosperity, cooperation, and long-term stability. Investing in infrastructure and innovation does not just secure water and energy, it secures peace. So do you want to say more about that? And I'm to the listeners, I'm going to attach his paper in the comments or in the description of this video, so everyone can get this paper, which is not long and not terribly intimidatingly technical for the engineers. I guess you'll have more, but go ahead.
No, it was done on purpose to be technical enough to put numbers, not to be just philosophy, but that it's something that everybody, even an economist or somebody else, can read, understand, and if willing, make questions. My plan was to trigger a first spark. Of course, this requires some additional work for defining better the pumping lines, where, how much, and I was to really make a very good job. This would be not simply a simple article. It should become a pamphlet, a short document, where there should be also the work of a politician explaining the plan from the political point of view, and an economist explaining this from the economical point of view. So this is just, I assume it as a draft, and I will be very happy to collect people willing to refine it and to make it something more refined, to be ultimately given to some politicians, goodwill politician all around the world. This is the basic idea I would really like to do. But just to complete what was in that sentence, I can only say that ultimately the most valuable resource is not water, energy, or minerals. It's our collective ability to work toward a better future. And the Oasis Plan is an invitation to the world, from my point of view, an opportunity to choose progress over stagnation, cooperation over division, and sustainability over crisis. By acting with rationality, ambition, and shared purpose, we do not just solve problems, we redefine the future.
Thanks. I really agree. And as someone who ran for US Senate twice, I can tell you, if I were in the US Senate, you would be invited in to address a committee hearing to discuss this. It's exactly what so-called politicians and economists should be looking at, really. It really is. And I think it creates the idea, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, after the United States left Afghanistan, said, why cannot the reconstruction and development of Afghanistan be a shared mission among, of course, the people who live there, but the US, Russia, China, who would be capable of providing the technology, the credit, etc. And also, you would think, I have questions about the US, but certainly Russia and China do not want a drug-running, terrorist-producing nation on their borders. So it would create the potential for our nations to work together instead of at war for something good, in a way to build trust and to create a new kind of relationship among nations.
Yes, because you see, the present situation, if I would be in the shoes of a small country, I would think to nuclear technology, but not for making nuclear power and desalination, but for making nuclear bomb, which is exactly the opposite that we are supposed to do. That's not how it should work. We should exploit nuclear energy for the benefit of the humanity, and it cannot be us against them. It cannot be okay. I'm okay. I don't care what happens around. This cannot. It's not going to work. And this is
No.
what I hope that is clear in this paper, and that many people would share this view with me.
Yes, I think most of us do, and we have to break down the doors and get ourselves into positions and or force the people who are in there to do it out of fear that they'll never be elected again, or maybe we're going to put them in jail, which would be nice. I think some of them have really deserve it. I hope. I believe actually that somehow if we fight, mankind could get through this, and a more civilized human race 100 years from now is going to look back and see how short-sighted and stupid some of our people were. But we have to get there. So I think perhaps we should wrap up, but do you have any concluding thoughts you would like to share?
Well, I really hope that the world will become more rational than what it is now. I hope that somebody will, first of all, read my paper, of course. That would be great. But I hope that rationality will prevail, and the world will see a bright future. I'm still optimist, nevertheless, because as you say, I believe that the majority of the people think like us. So I still see a bright future. I hope that everybody will help us making it really happen.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. I think this is going to be really useful, and perhaps we will also make use of it on other platforms to get the word out. And I'm going to produce a lot of copies of your paper for some meetings we have this weekend. And that's the last thing that I will say to people watching, is to please join the LaRouche organization. On Saturday, the Manhattan Project will feature the Oasis Plan. The live stream begins at 2:00. If you're in the New York City metropolitan area, we have an in-person meeting at 1 p.m. You can sign up at thelaroucheorganization.com or thelarouche.org for information on that meeting. Monday and Tuesday, because of the conference of Saudi Arabia and France, we will be in the street near the United Nations. Again, if you want details to join that activity, please email us at thelarouche.org. And again, Dr. Romanella, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope we meet again soon somewhere in person, maybe sometime in the US Congress, where we can be testifying to hearings about this.
It would be really great.
Thank
It
you.
has been a really pleasure to speak with you, and a privilege for me. Thank you very much.
Well, like